Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Wow, what a great crowd. With this is exceeded our expectations, I think. So thank you, everyone, for being here. All the mayors, city and county from rural West Tennessee. I guess every county is represented here, but except for Shelby in West Tennessee. So this is a great event. I want to thank Melinda Good and Joe Barker for getting this together with both the Northwest and Southwest Development Districts together. I think this is the first time that I know of that all the districts and all the mayors have come together at one time. Yes, sir. Shelby County is here. I apologize. Shelby County is here. So every county in West Tennessee is here, represented very well. So thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. But thank you to Jackson State for putting this for allowing us to have this event here. And it's a little bit tight. We thought it could be, but the other facility is having exchange for air conditioning. So we didn't want to meet where it wasn't air conditioned. So thank you, Jackson State, for putting this together, for allowing us to be here. So I'm going to go. I don't know if y'all want to say, okay. Well, thank you both for what you did to get this put together. So now I'm going to turn it over to our Comptroller, Jason Mumpower, who's going to give the presentation. So thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all very, very much. It is a delight to be here. Make sure we're set to go there. It is a delight to be here. We have been on tour around Tennessee. This is our 5th or 6th stop, more to go. We have been on tour around Tennessee talking about this American Rescue Plan, but this is our first sold out show. So thank you all for being here. It's very special. And let me say, as I start, a special thank you to my friends, to my employers in the General Assembly, Senator Ed Jackson, Senator Paige Wally, Senator John Stevens, Senator Paul Rose, Representative Ron Gant, Representative Chris Hurt, and Representative Johnny Shaw. I think they're all here. Is that right? Y'all raise your hand, stand up. You know these guys. I appreciate the legislature giving me the opportunity to serve as comptroller. And let me say something about these guys, though. I mean, these guys are my friends. Oftentimes, when I am in Nashville, I am out eating with them at night and fellowshipping them and their friends. Of course, Paige Wally and Johnny Shaw and I all served together in the House of Representatives at one time. Well, Paige and I at one time, and then Representative Shaw and I at another. So these are folks I've known for a long time, and I appreciate every one of them. And I want to mention Representative Griffey and Grills and Darby and Hawford and Todd and Representative David Byrd and Representative Deborah Moody. And I can't forget Representative Kirk Haston. He's somebody I really look up to. So I'm telling you, if my jokes are falling that flat that early, it's going to be a long presentation. And also, as we get started, I'm very pleased to say that we have here with us representing Congressman Kustoff. We have Ed Jackson III, which Ed III and Ed II and I were talking about how Ed III has such a much better haircut. I mean, I need your vote to be comptroller, but he's just got a better haircut. And representing Congressman Mark Green, Weston Watts, and representing Senator Haggerty, Matt Verino, is been here. Oh, and is back. Good, very good. Matt Verino is here representing Senator Haggerty. And I know we were all very glad to have Senator Blackburn with us today. So I appreciate you all coming together. And I know some of you, I hadn't seen you in a week or so since we were in Gatlinburg together at the Tennessee County Services Association conference. But I'll tell you, I'm glad we're back together because there's been stuff changed since last week. And I think I mentioned that at the front of this presentation because that is going to continue to be the rule for a while. The rules and guidance and parameters of this American Rescue Plan funding are going to change. Now, while we're still pulling a few in, and I'm telling you, sold out, standing room only, what a show. I am glad to have several people here from the Comptroller's office with me. Jennifer Pfeiffer, our Chief of Staff, is right over here, along with John Dunn, our Director of Communications, who's going to run the slide presentation today. And you know, one thing that I always say, and one thing that I know, is there's nothing that excites a group of local government officials more than seeing somebody from the Comptroller's office. And not just somebody from the Comptroller's office, but don't you love to see your auditors? Well, I knew you did, so I brought them with me today. Jim Arnett is our Director of Local Government Audit. Brian Berkland's our Assistant Director of Local Government Audit. And just up the street from our Jackson office, we have a team of auditors. Raise your hand up there in the back. Y'all are used to seeing them. In addition, we have Betsy Knotts, who is our Director of Local Government Finance. Betsy's office is the one when you adopt a budget locally. That's where you submit your budget for final approval at the Comptroller's office. Betsy is at the head of that office, and Lauren Webb is our Legislative Director. So with that being said, let's jump in and let's talk about the American Rescue Plan. Now, no doubt you're going to have a lot of questions as I talk about this. That is why we've given, of course, we're going to take some questions, but also you may have a question that you want to submit. That's what this card is for. If you have a question that we don't get to, or maybe you leave here and you're mowing the yard tomorrow and you think of a question you wish you would ask, that's what this card is for. You can use it to get to us and we will answer your question. But let's start out by talking about the American Rescue Plan and what it means to you. In a broad overview, the American Rescue Plan was adopted by the United States Congress. It was actually voted on in Congress on March 3rd and signed by the President on March 11th, 2021. When the President signed that package, it became the 6th COVID-19 relief package passed by the U.S. Congress. And the total American Rescue Plan, the total of the American Rescue Plan nationwide is $1.9 trillion. A lot of money. Now, of that $1.9 trillion nationwide, $350 billion of that was set aside to specifically assist state and local governments. Of that $350 billion, Tennessee cities and counties are going to receive more than $2.2 billion. Now, on top of what Tennessee cities and counties receive, Tennessee's local education agencies are going to receive another $2.2 billion. So that's $4.4 billion coming down to local governments in Tennessee. Now, let's talk about how the money is going to flow, and this is going to be important to you. All 95 Tennessee counties and 18 Tennessee cities, you will receive your money directly from the United States Treasury. However, you are not going to wake up one day and it just magically be in your bank account. You have to go online to the United States Treasury's website, to the submission portal, and you have to fill out a lot of paperwork and pledge your third born and all kinds of stuff. You have to have your picture taken. I promise. You have to have a designee, have your picture taken. And truthfully, let me tell you, I understand that it is easier to do this on a mobile device than it is on a desktop computer, because you've got to have somebody appointed to do this that has to have their picture made. So you may want to use a mobile device to do this. But you have to go to the U.S. Treasury website portal and request your money be drawn down. Later in the presentation, I will tell you where you can find this web link to go on and request your money be sent. So 95 counties, 18 cities, and we're going to show you the list of those 18 in just a minute. You are going to go and request to draw your money down directly. The other 327 cities in Tennessee, your money is going to first be sent to the state of Tennessee, to the Department of Finance and Administration, and then will be sent to you. As far as education funds go, education funds are going to flow through the Tennessee Department of Education and will be provided on a reimbursement basis, which is how school systems, you should already, anybody here from the schools today? No? Okay. Well, school officials should be accustomed to using the system, the electronic system, with the State Department of Education and drawing that money down. Now, I've told you there are 18 cities that are going to be receiving your money directly. And right here are the 18 on your screen. You say, why those 18? Well, those 18 happen to be part of what are designated by the federal government as metropolitan areas. Typically, they either have a population exceeding 50,000, or they are part of a statistical metropolitan area that has a population of over 50,000. If you're one of these 18 cities on the screen, you're going to be drawing your money down directly, and you're going to need that information about that portal. The other 327 cities, as I said, you're going to you're going to be sent your money from the State Department of Finance and Administration on down the road. So let's talk about how the money will flow. The city and county money will arrive in 2 tranches. The first wave or the first tranche of the money became eligible to be drawn down as of May 11th of this year. So it's been available for a few weeks. The second wave of the funding is going to be eligible to be drawn down a year from now, about 12 months from now. Now, for those of you 327 cities that are going to receive your money through the state, once the state receives it, and I don't think it has yet, once the state receives it, the state will have 30 days in which to send it out to you at the local level. And then once you receive your money, I'm going to talk about a couple of important dates in this presentation. Here's the first. Once you receive this money, cities and counties will have until December 31st of 2024 to spend the money. A little later in the presentation, we will talk more about what it means to spend the money. However, I wouldn't be the comptroller, and we wouldn't be here from the comptroller's office if we didn't want to start early by giving you a word of caution. And you can read right up there in the box, no expenditures should be made before you are certain that the use of funds comply with provisions of the American Rescue Plan. I mean, that's pretty simple. Before you spend the money, know the rules. Because why? Why is that important? Because if you spend the money incorrectly, then the federal government is going to want the money back. And what will have happened then? You will have spent the federal money and you will have spent it incorrectly. So what do you have left to return? Local money. And so you certainly don't want to be on the side of spending the money incorrectly. Because, of course, the comptroller's office is going to be auditing this money as well. And we certainly hope that we don't have any audit findings as a result of this money. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do with this money. This is an important slide because we know from the legislation as it was passed, and we know from the limited amount of federal guidance we have received so far, there are 5 distinct uses for this money. First, you can use this money to support public health expenditures. A few examples of that would be supporting and operating your vaccination programs, medical care, your testing and contact tracing, your enforcement of public health orders. You can use this money to enhance healthcare capacity, to provide ventilation improvements. You can provide capital investments in public facilities, such as improving public hospitals, health clinics, or making adaptations to public buildings to implement COVID mitigation tactics. Maybe you need some more distancing available in some of your public buildings. Are some of your courthouses and county and city buildings a little crowded sometimes? There you go, potential use of the money. Second, you can use the money to address negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency. Now, this is broad and could include things like helping workers, households, small businesses, nonprofits, and particularly helping impacted industries such as the tourism industry, the travel industry, or the hospitality industry. Third, and this one's tricky, you can use this money to replace lost public sector revenue. These funds can be used to help provide government services to the extent, and here's the trick, that the entity-wide revenues were reduced as a result of the pandemic. That is your revenues in aggregate. Unfortunately, you can't just say my hotel motel tax was down, my mixed drink tax was down, I want to replace those things. Your revenues in their aggregate have to have been down in order to use this money for revenue replacement. Now, when you work on replacement amounts, those amounts should be replaced or based on the most recent fiscal year prior to the emergency, which would be fiscal year 19. There is a very complicated, an overcomplicated, what would you call it? Formula, an overcomplicated formula for determining what would constitute revenue or eligibility for revenue replacement. If you think you might qualify for that and think you might want to use some of the money for that, please give us a call. We will help you work through that formula to see if you are indeed eligible for revenue replacement. Fourth, you can use this money to provide premium pay for essential workers. Now, these essential workers could include healthcare staff, grocery store workers, and restaurant workers. They could obviously include public health and safety staff. They could even include truck drivers, childcare workers, educators, school staff, and even farm workers. There is a broad ability to define what you would consider an essential worker. This premium pay can be provided retroactively for people that worked in an essential way during the pandemic, and it can be provided forward going. The amount of money available for people can be up to $13 an hour, up to $25,000 per person, if you choose to use this money for premium pay. And finally, one that I want to expand on, because it's possibly my favorite use of this money, is you can use this funding to make necessary improvements in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. Now, why do I say that's my personal favorite use? On any given day, if you were to ask me as a comptroller to look out across the landscape of Tennessee and identify where the greatest financial peril lies, I would tell you 6 days a week and twice on Sunday that it lies underground in Tennessee's utilities. And, I live a long way from Jackson, Tennessee. I live in Bristol, Tennessee, and I represented a house district that, had Mountain City in it. Have you all ever heard from Mountain City to Memphis? Well, I used to be the state representative for Mountain City. So I live a long way from here. But you know what? I know one thing is true in Mountain City, and I'll guarantee it's true here in Madison County, and I guarantee it's true all the way down to the Mississippi River. every community in the state could use some help improving its water and sewer utilities. I just know that is true. And your utilities are faced with aging infrastructure. We all in our communities have pipes in the ground that are 40, 50, 60, even 70 years old. And that water and sewer infrastructure, if unfixed, obviously presents a great challenge for our communities. Now, cities, you may want to fund utility improvements in your city-owned utilities, and counties, you are going to be able to pass some of these funds on to your utility districts to make improvements there. The type of projects that are eligible are ones that generally align with the wide range of projects that come eligible under the Clean Water or Drinking Water Revolving Fund list. And this is where I told you we're going to come back to what your deadlines are. Now, you remember I told you your money had to be spent by December 31st, 2024. However, we understand that if you enter something like a construction project or a water or sewer project, you might not have it complete by that time. So in that case, having your money spent by December 31st, 2024 means you have that money contractually committed by December 31st, 2024. If you have the money contractually committed by December 31st, 2024, you then have until December 31st of 2026 to see the project completed. So I'm going to say this at the end, but I want to say it now. Well, there is no need to have this money burn a hole in your pocket, because you have a period of time over the life of eligibility of this money to be very strategic and careful about how you spend this money. This money is going to have to last for a while. And so you want to be strategic, and I will come back to that in the end. Now, I know there may not be anybody here from school systems today, but all of you are in communities with schools. So this will be important to you, for you to know as well. Let's talk about some of the education spending eligibility. The funds that are being provided to local education agencies do come with a little bit more flexibility. Of the funds coming to LEAs, there is a requirement that 20% of the funds be used to address the issue of learning loss. Have any of you started summer clinics to address learning loss? I have a 9-year-old son. Today he's in one of those clinics himself. Our school system is operating one, and he's enjoying it. He really is. I mean, he's a lot more like his mother, and he's adopted. I mean, so I don't know how he got it. I mean, 20% of the money has to be used to address learning loss. Money like that can be addressed or dedicated to things like those summer clinics that I talked about, tutoring, after school programs, things like that. The other 80% of the money can be used for a variety of things. As a matter of fact, there's so much opportunity for this education money. You may have seen Governor Lee held a press conference. It's been more than a month ago now to talk about this 80% of the money. You know, and he recommended that educators use some of this money to do things like providing ACT preparation for students, expanding access to advanced coursework like AP classes, career and technical education programs, mental health support for students. They use it for things like teacher recruitment and retention, deferred maintenance for facilities. Do any of you have school buildings that could use a little maintenance? Everybody. They can use it for technology devices, high-speed internet, as well as serving special needs and low-income students. As a reminder for you, that money is going to come down and be administered by the Tennessee Department of Education. Now, after talking for a minute about what you can use this money for, let's turn and talk for a second about what you cannot use this money for. Now, this money, as I said, can be used in a variety of ways, but let me go over some of the restrictions. Number one, The funds cannot be used to reimburse costs that your government already incurred prior to March 3rd of 2021. The American Rescue Plan money is forward-looking. You remember I told you the Congress passed the bill on March 3rd, so you can't use it for anything, any cost incurred before March 3rd. You also cannot use the American Rescue Plan money to make contributions to rainy day funds or similar reserve funds. And that is the reason, I guess, the federal or the United States Congress did that is because they intended to dedicate this money to respond to the public health emergency and its negative economic impacts that exist today. And that would be saving for a future need. The money cannot be used to pay interest or principal on outstanding debt. That would include long-term debt as well as short-term or tax anticipation notes. And it cannot be used to pay fees associated with acquiring new debt. And finally, the American Rescue Plan funds cannot be deposited into a pension fund or used to reduce an accrued liability. Now, one thing to remember is all of the rules of this plan, this was passed by the United States Congress. There's unfortunately nothing we can do about it at the state level to change the rules, but we are here to help you stay in those within the rules. Now, this money also comes with some requirements, and let me talk about some of the requirements that each local government is going to have to follow when you draw down this money. First, and this ought to be easy because you do it every day, you are required to maintain adequate internal controls over the spending of these funds. I mean, that's simple. That's what you do to keep your funds in line every day. In addition to that, as far as this federal money goes, you're also going to need to ensure that your local government is meeting the periodic reporting requirements. These will include things like interim reports, quarterly project reports, expenditure reports, and in some cases, performance reports. Now, performance reports are only going to be necessary for communities with a population of over 250,000. Anybody from the city of Memphis in here today? Or no? So there may not be anybody here today that has to do a performance report. And as I mentioned earlier, it is always important to remember that these funds are going to be audited by the Comptroller's office or audited by your CPA firm in conjunction with oversight of the Comptroller's office. Now, let's talk about some best practices for how you're going to handle this money. Number one, and this is very important, how many finance directors do we have here today? Good number, great. Glad to see you all. Number one, it is important that all American Rescue Plan funds be maintained separately from other funds your government receives. Secondly, just as you maintain separate records of the money received, you should also maintain separate records of your expenditures. In other words, I mean, it's simple. It's what we do around our kitchen table every day. It is important to know how much you have received, in this case, how much American Rescue Plan money you've received, and how much you've spent at any given time. It is also very important for you as local government officials to keep detailed records and files of all transactions involving these funds. And something I know that you know, but something that it's always important to mention and remember is that this is taxpayer money. I mean, we are all American taxpayers. And I will tell you that we're going to be paying this off for a very long time. In fact, that 9-year-old son I talked about, he's going to be paying it off because this is a lot of money. And one thing that I know is there's nothing taxpayers appreciate more than transparency in how you deal with and spend this money. So you're going to want to keep that at the front of mind. Continuing with our best practices, and this next one's very important. The money coming in is one-time money. So it is very important that you remember you should spend it on one-time expenses. The funds are not going to show up every year. They're non-recurring. And if you start using this money for recurring expenses, in that it's non-recurring revenue, obviously we know you're going to run into trouble. So you may want to, and you do want to think carefully about each expenditure. Now, let me say there's two things that could happen. Number one, you could intentionally get in trouble by spending this non-recurring money on recurring expenses. And we don't want anybody to do that intentionally. We certainly don't want you to do it accidentally either. You need to be strategic and think, because maybe if you refurbish a building and return that building to service, you're going to create the ongoing recurring expense of operating that building. Now, there may be some cases where you can use this one-time money to refurbish that building or build a building and put it in service. You may have enough naturally recurring local revenue that you can afford that. And you can use this one-time money for that expense if you can afford the recurring expense created by it. If you have questions about that, if you don't know if you can afford that or not, that's when you call Betsy. Betsy and your assigned financial analyst, every one of you in here, every city and county in Tennessee, have a staff person in our office, a financial analyst who's assigned to you. We will help you figure that out. I talked about water and sewer earlier, talking about recurring expenses there. If you do choose to upgrade water or sewer facilities, one thing that has to happen is the ratepayers for that utility have to fund depreciation on those improved assets moving forward. And you know what? In my opinion, it is a real blessing to get a huge upgrade in your utility system and only have to pay the depreciation moving forward. Again, my favorite use of this money is improving water and sewer infrastructure across the state. In summary, and I think it's up here on the screen, the last bullet right there. This is something you do every day. This is something I know you want to do with this money. Use this money to do the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of citizens and students in your community. I mean, that's what you do every day with your local tax revenue. That's what you want to do with this money. So that being said, let me pass on our advice for this money. First, we recommend that you use this money to stabilize your communities. Now, you may need to stabilize your local government. You may also want to dedicate resources to help people and businesses in your community who have been suffering throughout this pandemic and are still suffering. Second, think strategically about how you're going to use this money. Ask yourself the question, how can I use this money to do the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people moving forward? You should also pay attention and make yourself aware of state level American Rescue Plan funds and how they're going to be spent. I can tell you, I was on a call today talking about the money the state of Tennessee is receiving, and the state of Tennessee is considering helping you invest in water and sewer improvements across Tennessee. I mean, there's even with all the money coming, I'm not sure enough to do everything we need to do in water and sewer. So let's see what we can do if you know what the state is doing and you can leverage some of that state money and some of your local money at the same time, we can make it go further. Broadband is another way to be strategic. See what neighboring communities are doing with broadband. See what the state is doing with broadband. And third, let me say, take some time. Don't let this money burn a hole in your pocket. Use the opportunity to we've done it here in this room today. Bring together government officials, business leaders, nonprofits, neighborhoods, citizens, other stakeholders to strategize about where the need is greatest in your individual community. You may even want to consider regional initiatives, especially as you're thinking about water, sewer, and broadband. Now, with everything that I have said, there are still some unknowns. The federal guidance that has been issued so far, you know what it's called? It's called the interim final guidance. It's called the interim final guidance. That sounds like, no offense to my friends who are representing our great members of Congress. But only the federal government could issue interim final guidance. And so it is possible, and it is even likely, that there will be continuing evolving in the rules related to these funds and evolving in relation to the specific reporting requirements. I can tell you that we are working closely with the State Department of Finance and Administration, which will be delivering this money to the 327 cities that weren't on that list. And we're very hopeful. We've been working even since last week with local governments about we're hoping to develop a pre-audit certification program where a contractor with the state will be able to give you some pre-audit certification on your proposed expenditures. I can guarantee you that our office, the Tennessee Comptroller's Office, will continue to work closely with you, that we will continue to be here for you if you need us, and that we will continue to work with the membership groups that represent you, the Tennessee County Services Association, the Tennessee Municipal League, the Government Finance Office Association, on and on. We will work, and I know we have some friends from CTAS here. CTAS is going to be a big help to you. I'm sure MTAS will be a big help to you as well. Is anybody from MTAS here? Yeah, there we go. And so those are organizations you're going to want to lean on as well. Let me say, with all that being said, there's a lot going on in your mind. There might be questions that you have on your mind right this minute. There might be some questions you think about on down the road. A couple of tools that we have created for you. First, at the Comptroller's Office, we have created a website for you. I hope, has anybody here in the last month or so received 1, 2, 3 emails from me? The Comptroller's Office has issued 3 memos so far with guidance about this program. We have sent those memos out to over 4,000 local officials around the state each time. If you have not received them, we want you to receive them in the future. So write your information down on this card right here. Write your information down on this card right here, and be sure and leave it on this table before you depart, okay? And we'll put you on our list. But if you haven't received those emails, all 3 of the memos, the guidance memos that have been released so far, are available on that website. In addition, you remember I told you had to go to the U.S. Treasury portal to request your money. The link to that website is right there. Go to our website, you'll find a link to the United States Treasury portal, and you can find that there. If that is not enough, we have also created for you an email address. If you have a question you think of, or if you have an idea or suggestion you want to send our way, you can email arp@cot.tn.gov, and we will get you an answer back to your inquiry. That email is special for you. Also, a phone number right there, 615-401-7841. And let me say, in regard to that, if you have any questions, it is always better to call the comptroller before the comptroller calls you. So please email us, call us, send us a smoke signal, whatever you need to do. We will help you, I promise. So what I have right here on the next few slides are some allocations, and we will start rolling through those. First off, we have our county allocations of how much you're scheduled to receive. You can see the first slide right there on the screen. Take a picture of it, scribble it down. We're going to move to slide number 2. I think we have 21 counties represented here today. That's amazing. That's more than 20% of the entire state's counties. So we're grateful for you being here. John, I see you've moved to the second slide there. And now we'll move to our third county allocation slide. So for counties, your allocation is based on population. For counties, your allocation is based on population. Here we have next our allocations for your local education agencies. And while I know there's not schools here today, something you're going to want to know about, no doubt. A lot of money. The formula for arriving at how much money each LEA gets is very complicated. But in general, school systems do receive more money when they have higher numbers of children in poverty. If you're wondering why somebody gets that amount of money, we're still moving through those. And let me say, unfortunately, I don't have specific allocation numbers for each city because those are still being calculated. But in general, and it is very general, you can expect to receive somewhere around 75% of your prior year's budget. Is that, what would you say? Betsy? Right. John gives me one eye, Betsy gives me another one. I'm going to go with Betsy. So about 75% of your prior year's budget. So as I get ready to close out, I want to deviate just a minute. And talk to you about something totally different. And then I'm going to come back to the American Rescue Plan. In addition to helping with finances of all kinds, the Comptroller's Office is also the repository for census data when it comes back from the federal government. And as you know, they are running way late in sending that census data back. We are here to assist you with redistricting and reapportionment. If you have not appointed a redistricting committee in your local community, please do it right away. We are anticipating receiving the census data sometime in August or September. We will get it to you when we do, and you need to be ready to hit the ground running. Just last week, we sent out our latest guide to local government redistricting in Tennessee. You should have received one. If you didn't, right there's the website right there where you can receive and look at that redistricting guide. Please take steps today to appoint your redistricting committee. You must have your redistricting plan done and submitted by January 1st of 2022. In our office, many of you know Matthew Hill and John Thomas. This is not to be confused with a prior legislator who was named Matthew Hill. We have a staff member in our office. Again, a lot of you know him, Matthew Hill, and we have a fellow named John Thomas. They're our redistricting specialists. They will come to your community if you need help. They will help you with redistricting. So now, after that break, back to our regularly scheduled programming, the American Rescue Plan. Let me tell you a quick story, which is a true story. On May 1st, I have a son, and on May 1st of this year, he turned 9 years old. And we didn't have a big birthday party at that time because he wanted to take his friends to the pool this summer. But what we did is we had the grandparents in that day. And when you have a grandchild who turns 9, what do? You give them money, right? Well, my wife and I that morning had given my son for his birthday 250 Pokemon cards. That's a true story. We had given him 250 Pokemon cards. And then grandparents get there for lunch and give him all this birthday money and all this kind of stuff. And the minute they backed out of the driveway, what did he want to do? He said, "Dad, let's go to Books A Million and buy some Pokemon cards." I mean, what was he doing? He was letting that money burn a hole in his pocket. And that is what I am urging you not to do. When you have the urge, or if you have commissioners or council members, the urge to let this money burn a hole in your pocket, say, "Jason told me about his son, and let's not go buy those Pokemon cards today." We did not go buy any more Pokemon cards that day. And, you know, hopefully that's a humorous, but hopefully that's a humorous but realistic way that you can help remember to think about, take some time, be strategic with this money, make sure you get something you want. Remember that there's half the money going to come this year, half the money going to come next year in 2022. And then in 2023 and 2024, there's no more money coming, but you still have those 2 years to spend the money, right? Let's talk about another basic principle of American economics. There's a great deal of money in the economy right now. And, you know, the world is snapping back to normal. And what creates inflation? A large supply of money mixed with demand, right? We see inflation in the construction sector today, right? And we're probably going to see more of it in other sectors of the economy as things come back to life. And so just thinking about the economy as a whole, you got the money today, you're getting the second half next year, nothing in 23 and nothing in 24. You know, we could be experiencing an economic valley. I don't know. Nobody knows. But we could be experiencing an economic valley in 23 or 24 when this stuff cuts off. Because I will tell you, I mean, what's going on in our economy is, you know, it's not the greatest recipe for success, but it is what it is, right? And so let's be strategic. Let's think long term about this money. And let's do the best we can to do the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of citizens in our communities. I thank you very much for having me here. I thank the group of legislators here. If these guys were a super team, it's like having the Avengers of Tennessee as your legislative delegation. And I thank you all for having me here. And Senator Jackson, I'll turn it back over to you or take questions or whatever you want me to do.
Just 2 things. I know Representative Tandy Darby walked in just as we started. So
yes. What a freshman who just hit it out of the park in his first year.
So if anybody else has come in that I'm not aware of, but also this is being recorded. And will this recording be available to download perhaps? Okay, I guess they need to know how to be able to do that. So we can show to some of their staff. So I just want to bring that point out.
Sure. And let me thank Melinda and Joe with the Northwest and Southwest Development Districts. They perform a great service for you. There may even be a service they can provide for you in terms of helping you figure out how to use and manage this money. So thank you all very much. The food was great. There's nothing I love more than a good old ham and cheese sandwich, and it was great. Thank you. How about questions? How long what?
How long should we wait for the decision? You kept saying wait, and the government was going to come back with things to do, jump ahead, and they come back. Possible for first.
Now, are you a city or county?
I'm
Well, okay. That's a good response. That's a good response. So I was going to extrapolate. So your city, but I was going to extrapolate, but that's a great way to do it because the situation is different. If you were said county, I would have said, well, have you drawn your money down yet? And if you'd have said yes, I'd have said one thing. If you'd said not yet, I'd have said another. So, I mean, that's how this thing is. I mean, it's a web of questions, right? So I don't think it is irresponsible after you have received your money to wait 60 to 90 days before you engage on spending it. What do you all think? I mean, I think we're going to have, you know, so when the government issued the interim federal rule, that federal rule went into a 120-day period of public comment. So we're already almost 30 days into that 120 days. So at the end of that 120 days, you can presume there's going to be revised federal guidance. So if you got your money today and you said, let's wait 90 days, before we spend it, you'd probably have that second round of guidance. So in your case as a city, first you have to wait until your money comes down from the state to even know how much you're going to receive. And so it's hard to start making big plans until you know how much you're going to receive and know what the final rules are. Does that sound logical, Senator?
Justin, thanks for being here. Question, you talked about refurbishing the building,
Uh-huh.
but somewhere about build it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a misstatement or?
No.
'Cause I didn't see it in the slide.
Okay, sure. Going back, what I was talking about right there, John, help me find the slide with the 5 uses of the money. Slide number 9, when we talk about the potential 5 uses of the money. One of the 5 uses of the money would to be to make adaptations for buildings in regard to thinking about the next pandemic and providing for things like distancing or ventilation. For example, you could have a courthouse or some other public county or city building that's crowded right now. And if you have people come in to get their tags or something like that, there's not enough room for them to spread out, right? So you could use this money. We think it's justifiable to use this money to expand that building or even build a new building justified. And listen, part of the art of spending this money is going to be how you justify the spending. And if you want to do something like expand a building or build a new building, it is going to have to be justified on the fact that you're doing something to create prevention of spread of the next pandemic. You may want to create more room in an existing building to provide distancing. You may not have the ability to expand a building, so you may want to build a new building that has room for distancing, that has better ventilation, things like that. This all has to be hinged around preventing health emergencies with the next pandemic or this one. I mean, we're going to have another wave of, heck, I'm not a doctor, but it's going to get cold again. I think maybe in a few months, people are going to be back together. I would say that would be an acceptable use. Again, based on the fact that you're purchasing that building to provide distancing and sanctity, do things like a drive-through to have some contactless interaction right there. I would say that would be an acceptable use. Of course, you've got to have the recurring money in your budget, your local budget, to operate that building. Mayor?
We own our own service. We got a lot of cases. Close proximity.
Mm-hmm. Again, if you were using that money to expand a building for the purpose of doing things like preventing spread of COVID-19, because you got guys that bunk close together, then yes, I would say that you can. Yes. Thank you. So we had a meeting in Gatlinburg last week when I talked about a proposal at that point in time to allow the local money to be given to or to be sent to the state for holding and handed out by a consultant. I will tell you that we have had a very negative reaction to that proposal. Communities have indicated to us, and not just me, but others at the state, that they want to keep their money. They've heard from local banks that they want it invested locally and to be able to use the interest. And so probably because we've had such an overwhelming lack of interest in that, I think we're headed in a different direction. And that is based on the input of local officials. Right back here. And then I'll come here and here. Yeah. Mhm. No, I'm talking hypothetically right now. We are hoping, and again, we're trying to listen to local government officials, and it's not just me, it's not just the comptroller's office, but it's a variety of state officials. And we're hoping the Department of F&A is going to have engagement with a consultant that will be able to help with kind of a pre-audit check on is your proposed expenditure within the rules of the federal government. We're going to keep you posted on that. Again, as the question was down here, are we going to have the option for you to send your money to the state and have it and that just kind of fell flat with local officials. I mean, that's not bad. That input is good. We had it indicated to us that you didn't want that. So, but we hope to have a pre-audit certification portal right over here. Then we'll come down here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When did you purchase the bank? Prior to the March 3rd. So obviously it can't be used to offset the purchase. Could it now be used to offset the rehab of the building? Yes. 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 Well, you're bringing the whole building up to use for the purpose of distancing and using the drive-through and creating COVID mitigation tactics. And so, yes, I would say that it could. Right over here. And then I'll come here. I will definitely pass that along. And again, I'm certainly not by myself the decider, but we'll pass that on. And I think one thing that happened after we got away from Gatlinburg and things is people started thinking about investing that money in their local communities and found out their banks might have had more capacity than they realized and stuff like that. Yeah. All of the above, all of the above. I mean, I think you definitely want to work in conjunction with each other. And, if you're doing sewer and water in the city, I mean, the county might want to build off of that. And I mean, if you have a city utility and then you have to team up with the utility district, we want to work and make sure everything is done the right way. But I think you should think about that. Yes. Right. Has anybody, let me ask this, and I'll ask Jim and Brian, did anybody have to let anybody out of jail during COVID because you didn't have enough room and you had prisoners laying all over each other? I mean, so you might need a little more distancing room in your jail, right? So that might be another thing most communities have. Folks, if we can, let everybody keep, it's real, we'll go around real quick. We'll go here and then here, and then we'll go over here. Uh-huh. I mean, you can use this money to give grants to businesses of any kind, really. You want them to have demonstrated that they suffered economic loss during this pandemic. So when you think about a business related to tourism, it can be anything. Do you have a cafe that people like to drive miles to come eat at? Do you have a museum? Do you have an art gallery? Do you have a children's park? Do you have, I mean, I could go on and on. So it's pretty broad. Right up here. Do you all know anything about that? We just, give me your name and number. I don't have my redistricting guy with me, and we'll get back to you on that. It's in the guide. Yes, yes. Be sure we have your email address and you're on our list if you hadn't been getting it, Dick. Fellas, Brian?
Well, guidance in written form right now says, number one, you do not have to send it back to federal government because generally the program income. You don't have to do that. The next guideline says it should have to be spent in the program income. We are hearing people say, more than numbers of people that say you can use Treasury will have something in writing. Next time. Stay tuned. Right now, based on what I see in the written guidance is program.
So there's a little bit to stay tuned on. I think we might hear more. I hope we hear more about that in the revised final rule. Mayor, and then right over here. Do you know, Brian? Is the American Rescue Plan part of the ESSER money? It is. Right over here. Uh-huh. I believe it does cover stormwater, doesn't it? Yes. Yeah. Right here. Great question. As we understand it, the federal guidance gives the mayor of each community great gives each mayor a broad ability to define who is an essential worker in their own community. Is that a fair, way to say it? Yes. Yeah. Great question. So last week, the suggestion was made that once we get something up and going, again, I hope we're going to have a pre-audit certification type portal. And once we get something like that up and going, can we have then a place on that website that lists things that have been approved in other communities? So you can go and look and say, well, I see that X community did this and it was approved. That's a great idea. I'd like to do it too. Right. So we hope that kind of thing will come. The Department of Finance and Administration is going to be the one that has the contract with the consultant that does this, but we're in close communication with them and we're trying to make sure those type things happen. Senator?
Jason, this might be something to add on.
Great point. That's a great point. Yes. Well, that's a great point. And y'all heard Senator Wally talk about the 100 million statewide that's coming down. Each of your communities is going to be receiving a portion of that. That money is coming unrestricted. However, it does have an expiration, and the expiration of that is June 30 of 2022. And so you want to use that unrestricted. It's also one-time money. So use it for a non-recurring expense that is not, that's not allowed by this American Rescue Plan money, so that you use that state money wisely. So the question is, and I'm coming there, when is that money coming down? That money is coming down when the new state budget takes effect on July 1st. You'll be receiving that money soon after that. Yes. That's a great question, and yes, we believe it is. Do y'all want to expand on that? Yes. We might have to, we're going to have to follow up with you on that, and be sure and write that down and give it to us. We're, I see that we've kind of expended our allotted time. We're going to be here for a few minutes. If you have a question, come down. If I can ask all my legislator friends to come down, I want to get a picture with y'all real quick. But I hope this was helpful. Helpful? Yes, no, maybe. Remember to please, if you have a question or you need on our email list, put your cards right here. Thank you all. Senator Jackson.
Just before, a quick minute. Thank you, Comptroller Mumpower and your staff, for being here for this important meeting to answer questions. Download the stream on this. I think it's will be available for you for those that weren't able to be here. And thank you, Jackson State, and thank you for the Development District. So we're dismissed. Thank you.
Let me get a picture with you guys.